Today on Warframe Wednesdays, we are talking The War Within, bringing you guys my thoughts, my impressions, my review, whatever you want to consider it. But of course, we need to start by asking everyone who has not played the Nata Quest, the Second Dream, or The War Within to stop watching right now. This video is going to be loaded with spoilers for all of those things. And honestly, if you're even considering starting Warframe in the next year, like if you're seriously saying, oh, once I have time in summer, once I have time this winter, I'm going to play Warframe, don't watch this. Don't watch any spoilers, especially ones related to the cinematic story quest. Seriously, if you're going to put all the time and effort into playing Warframe, getting past the barriers for entry, getting past the learning curve, and eventually getting to the point where you can unlock and play these quests, you don't want to have any of them spoiled for you. Rarely do I feel the knowledge of a quest can affect the overall experience you'll have so greatly as the one that you will see in Warframe. Like, you'll still enjoy the quest if they're spoiled for you, but they won't have the same emotional impact they have when you actually play them for the first time for yourself blind. So please, walk away. All right? Shut the door. I'm going to lock it. Don't peek through the window. Okay, we're good. The rest of us, let's talk The War Within. Now, the Second Dream is, I think sort of lauded, sort of held above everybody's head, especially new players, as being like the greatest Warframe quest, right? Like, it's everything. You gotta play the Second Dream. No one was really ever telling me, Tony, you gotta play The War Within, right? Everybody's like, you gotta play the Second Dream. Now, that may just be a matter of consequence, considering you have to play the Second Dream to get to The War Within, I believe. The order of things. And I'm not saying that the Second Dream isn't special. I do understand why everybody wants you to play the Second Dream. It is it's the can opener, right? For, like, the biggest can of worms that Warframe can possibly offer. It really does introduce to you for the very first time the difference between Tenno and Operator and Warframe. It helps you understand what those things are, and it opens up the seemingly very large book that is the history of all of those things within the Warframe universe. It is very powerful and very special and very well executed. But The War Within, obviously because it was created after the Second Dream, feels like the evolution of DE's storytelling capabilities. It feels like everything they did with the Second Dream and then some in terms of building an emotional connection between the player and the game world, and also in representing other characters that exist within the Warframe universe. Teshin, for example, the Queen, the Orokin, the Grineer. Everything just feels more like, oh, that's how these things work, that's how these people are, that's the alliances that they share, and that's sort of the position that they hold within the game world. Things just feel more clear, and honestly, The War Within, to me, feels like a proper, full-blown story that I would experience in any BioWare Mass Effect game. It felt great. It felt amazing. It was very powerful, in my opinion. And it managed to be so powerful in both its storytelling and gameplay efforts, not just in the big things that it does, but also in the small things that it does. And the very first thing that really hit me in the face, just smack like a really big bug on a windshield at the start of The War Within, is the clear representation they give us between the Operator being in transference and seeing through the eyes of the Warframe. Now, we know that's how that works because of the Second Dream, right? Like, we understand how that idea works, but this is the first time we get to see it sort of a la Tony Stark booting up his Iron Man suit for the first time. We get to see what it's like inside of the suit, essentially, looking out. And while we're not inside of a Warframe like Tony Stark is inside of the Iron Man suit, we are still looking through the eyes of that Warframe. And seeing that perspective, the way that that's, actually showcased to us at the start of the War Within's quest, I think does a lot to further alter our perspective of what Tenno and Warframe are and how they work and function together. And of course, that's all taken to like 11 once we actually gain the ability to use transference anywhere and step out of our Warframe. And that whole concept, that whole sort of process of like being in and out of your Warframe, being powerful and then being powerless as an Operator and as a Tenno, is very much the driving point behind the War Within's story, because it plays out through the rest of that story mission. You're constantly in and out of your Warframe, and I think more importantly is the point in the War Within where we are essentially stripped of our Warframe. We are taken 100% out of our Warframe. We essentially lose transference, and we're left as just a lowly Tenno, an Operator with no abilities, in a situation where I felt for the very first time actually vulnerable. which is a big deal because Warframe is a game with its DNA steeped in the power trip fantasy, right? It's all about being powerful. It's all about slaughtering thousands of enemies in the blink of an eye with very little effort. And now I'm walking up a snow-covered mountain, afraid to fall off the edge because I know I can't bullet jump. You know, I can't glide. I've no abilities essentially. I'm just left for dry. And then you get the beautiful process of not regaining your old powers. You don't just reacquire your Warframe and go kill some stuff. No, you acquire new powers as a Tenno, as an operator, that then allows you to not just go reacquire your Warframe, but to save tension, to take down the Queen, and then to work side by side with your Warframe as the operator with those newfound powers. They nailed that, man. They nailed that so well. So many games try and do the, oh, you lost all your powers, you know, you were the greatest thing ever, and now you're nothing, and you got to earn it all back. And few of them ever are able to present you with the situation where you acquire different powers. You acquire something new. You typically just reacquire the things you already lost. Destiny 2 did this. It was my least favorite part of that game. Losing our powers should have felt more substantial than it did in Destiny 2. And instead, we just reacquired our light in a very short period of time, and that was that. I wanted to spend, 3-4 hours of Destiny, having to deal with threats as a lowly, powerless, lightless guardian, but we never got that opportunity. We were so quickly thrust back into the power scene of like, oh, there's my abilities. It made that moment when we did reacquire those abilities, when we returned to that pedestal with our power trip, with our power fantasy, just made it feel like nothing. It felt as if we never lost them in the first place. There was no period where we could actually develop a longing for our powers. Now, it's not as if we spend a lot of time in the War Within without those powers, but again, it's the way we reacquire our powers. It's the way we acquire a new set of powers and the small trials that we have to overcome, how they're distributed, and also how the storytelling is distributed throughout those things that I think manages to make the instance in which DE does their, we took away your powers, now gain them back, a lot more special than it ever could have been had it been done in a more traditional fashion. It's just a really great part of the War Within for me. It was huge, and they also used that entire experience to introduce these quest choices, these dialogue choices, if you will. You're presented with these forks in the road, and you've got 3 paths you can take. Now, when games typically present the player with choice in dialogue, they tend to make it very clear. They present you with that dialogue in a situation where you kind of already know what's going to happen. And that way, you can make a decision and have a very clear understanding of the outcome. Not the case here. Not the case here at all. Not only are you basing your knowledge on the just recently acquired knowledge that you and the Tenno have, which isn't much, you are also basing your decision on outcomes that you don't fully understand. You have to look at those choices and say, okay, but what does that mean? What's going to happen? You have to really sit for a moment and consider the decision you're going to make and how that could potentially influence everything else. There's nothing in Warframe that allows you to clearly understand what could happen or what will happen or if anything will happen. So you're left with this bit of mystery in those moments, and you just have to make the decision on raw instinct, on your gut. You have to put yourself in the same situation that the operator finds themselves in, and you have to say, what would I do if that was me? Let me think about what I've just been through. Let me think about what this staff was used for. What decision do I make? Do I destroy it? Do I control it? What do I do? It took me 5 minutes to make that final decision, by the way, to decide to destroy it, to essentially, in my mind, free the souls, right? To get rid of the Orican blood, because the Queen had only used it for bad. She hadn't used it for anything good. She used it to control people like Tension, a Dax. And so I was just like, no, I don't want anything to do with this. But another player could have made a different decision based on, the conclusion that they came to, and that was a big deal. Again, it was those small details throughout the War Within that did a lot for me. Did a lot to really strengthen my connection to the Warframe experience in a way that I hadn't anticipated. And that's probably my favorite thing about playing any of the story quests here in Warframe, is that each and every one I've experienced so far, from the Nata to Second Dream to now War Within, has been able to not only defy my expectations, but to ensure that I don't really want to have any expectations. Like, after I played the second Dream, I didn't go about creating expectations for the War Within. I just knew I wanted to play it. People told me it was good, and I left it at that. I didn't even try and consider what was going to happen or what could happen. I just let the punches roll, and what I got was a really amazing piece of short storytelling. You know, and that's another thing that I really want to applaud DE for, is being able to tell these stories, very powerful stories, with a lot of great little set pieces and cinematic moments that not only make you feel powerful, but that make you smile, make you grin, make you say, oh shit, that was cool, you know, in a 2-hour period. To be able to do that in such a short bit of time in video games means a lot. That means you have a really good grasp, I think, of how to tell a story, and how to do it in such a way that the player doesn't feel like anything's been left out, because 2 hours for a film, you know, that seems like a lot, but when you're mixing gameplay and you only have very specific situations where you can deliver that sort of punchline, the next punchline, and say to the player, you need to understand this. We need to get this point across to you. It has to be so well executed for it to work, and for it to work as well as it does in The War Within. Now, I should also mention everything with Teshin, everything with Teshin, right? The whole relationship between the operator and Teshin now is really fantastic, because Teshin's that sort of character who's kind of got like the Master Splinter vibe going on, right? He's got sort of that same connection to you that Splinter has to the Turtles in a way, or at least that's how I feel about him. And so when he betrays you, I was pretty salty about that. I was pretty upset, right? And then as you see it sort of all come full circle, and the way that he carries himself throughout that situation, you know, just always being mysterious Teshin. And when you find out why, it's just really powerful. You know, so having that choice to let Teshin kill the queen, you know, to me, while it may not have been like the most, I guess you could say, good light side decision to make, it like instantly felt like the right one to me. You know, he had made all these sacrifices for me, putting himself at risk essentially, and being trapped under the queen's control for so long that it was like, this is the sort of relief, the release, if you will, that he absolutely deserves. There's a lot to The War Within. A lot happens in like just over an hour, right? So there you have it, guys. My thoughts on The War Within. Can't wait to play more cinematic story quests from DE. Honestly, it's funny how good they are, because everything about Warframe is like just grindy, sort of really gameplay oriented, but DE crushes these story quests to the point where if they released like a Warframe, you know, like solo experience that was all about story, that was like 10 hours long, like a full-blown single-player game, you know, I'd pay $60 for that in a heartbeat, because yeah, it would probably be amazing. Thank you guys so much for watching. Feel free to share some of your thoughts, your first-hand experiences with The War Within, how The War Within made you feel in regards to your time with Warframe, down in the comment section below, and I will see you in the next one.